All right. Party people in the place to be, vandals, and all you robot kaiju fighters out there. I'm Red Ranger Johnny. Joining me tonight, we have Joey Paquette, our buddy 40 ounce goose, but we have an extra special, rad as hell, super guest on. Why don't you introduce yourself, Mr. Grant?
How you doing? My name is Rylend Grant. I write comic books and movies and TV shows, and I'm a general hooligan of all sorts and varietals. How you doing? It's good to meet you guys.
Oh, it's
Likewise.
Great. Yeah. Goose, you're just so excited, aren't you? This was Goose's big setup. Like Goose got me into Rylend. Actually, it was when I first met him. He was like, "You reading the Action Lab?" And I'm like, "Oh, I know Zombie Tramp." And he's like, "Oh no, you got to read Banjax. You got to read Aberrant. This guy is so unreal." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I picked him up off of Amazon, and the first thing I thought was like, "Oh my god, dude, this guy needs to write Daredevil sometime in the future." Who's my favorite superhero, and like, oh my, that's my dream for you, man, is to see you writing Daredevil. Do you have any aspirations to maybe write for that character in the future?
Yeah, sign me up for Daredevil. It's funny because you're the second. I did another podcast earlier today, and he mentioned Daredevil specifically. Also, there's Daredevil in the air. But yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't turn down Daredevil, and Daredevil's a badass character, and there have been some really great runs on Daredevil. That seems like a good fit. It's funny because you get that you write a couple of books and you get nominated for a couple of awards, and then suddenly like your name's on the tip of people's tongues, and you start to get that question, right? Well, like what do you want to write? And it's a weird one for me because I'm an odd dude. Like, I wouldn't turn down Daredevil. But my dream, that's not necessarily the direction it goes in. I mean, I got that. You do interviews and that question comes up all the time, and people kind of expect you to like say, I don't know, like, I guess Moon Knight would be cool or whatever. And like for the first 3 or 4 times, like I answered it that way because it took me by surprise. And so then I finally had to like take a step back and be like, okay, well, how do I answer that question honestly? And to tell you the truth, like, again, I'm an odd duck, and I come from the film business. I mean, I have for about 15 years written movies and TV shows in Hollywood. I've written for like Ridley Scott, J.J. Abrams, John Woo, Justin Lin, Luc Besson, and on and on. I write mostly big poppy action stuff. And that's kind of where my heart lies. My favorite film of all time is The Karate Kid, and I'm obsessed with it. And so if you ask me, like, what is your dream comic job? I would love to do a Johnny Lawrence story. Like, I should be writing Cobra Kai for IDW. It seems like a very reasonable, low bar ask. But Johnny Lawrence is my fucking spirit animal, and I would knock that shit out of the park. So get me on it. If there's somebody listening at IDW, I'm all in. I will do Daredevil after that. And I will be very excited about it, but I need to get my my Eagle Fang
Thank
story.
You for the candidness and the really honest answer, and that's an incredible aspiration, because I'm Dojo Eagle Fang for life too. You know what I mean? I'm a huge Johnny Lawrence fan.
Yeah, this last year was very tough on me because after years of Cobra Kai affiliation, I had to jump ship, and I'm still in therapy over it. I'm still working it out, but I'm wearing that red right now. So
okay, so you were part in the beginning of a part on the Cobra Kai.
I've
production or
no, I've never written for Cobra Kai. I'm saying I wore Cobra Kai colors since I was about 5.
Okay.
When I was so that was the.
So do you dig the show? Have you watched it? Do you like it?
Yeah. The show's great. The show is awesome, and I mean it's it just shows you how great an actor William Zabka is. I just think he's just so great, and like he's such a terrible person in a way, but you love him for it because there's so much like heart and soul there, and that is like that's masterful writing and masterful performance, and I'm all in on it. I thought they've done they've done some really interesting stuff. I mean, I love this idea of taking this beloved property that's just like full of nostalgia and really kind of building out the world and exploring that world. And I think they've done a great job of it, of kind of, you know, of writing these love letters to these movies that we all loved. And you know, again, it's my favorite piece of IP like ever. And you know, again, this last season was specifically a love letter to Karate Kid 2, which may actually be the best film of the series. It was great to see that, and just how much love and care they put into this. And then there's something for us, you know, the kind of old dogs that grew up with the original films. And then there's something for, you know, the new generation too. Let's build out a whole new generation of kind of heroes, and that's been fun. I think it's done great. And you know, in fact, it's I mean, some of the conversations that I'm having both in the film and the comic business right now are kind of in that vein. Like, you know, I was in meetings a couple of weeks ago with Joel Silver's people talking about what could be done in the world of like Roadhouse or 48 Hours, whether that was Roadhouse. Whether that was in like a television world or even in a comics world. You know, I really love that idea. I mean, it's like I'd love to do a Johnny Lawrence story. I would love to do like an Axel Foley story in comics. I think that would be awesome. Like World of Beverly Hills Cop. You know, my friend Ronnie Barnes, you know, who writes Philadelphia and is the showrunner on the Lakers TV show for HBO. We had him on my podcast. I do a comics podcast called The Writer's Block, where it's just, you know, a bunch of creatives sitting around just talking shop. And we had Rodney on, and he just went to MGM and he got the rights to Blackula. Like, you know, Blackula was his shit growing up. He loved that movie more than anything. And so now he has the property, and he's going to do a Blackula comic and release it on his own imprint. Nice. And it's you know, and it's going to be a love letter. You know, it's somebody who knows it backwards and forwards, and a guy who's like obviously a genius writer and will do it justice. And so I'm excited about that. And you know, if MGM's open for business, I'm going to go and get fucking Jim Cotta from them or something like that. You know? Nice. Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, before we get into talking about Mr. Grant's,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jules. Go ahead. You haven't talked yet. No, I was just going to get into the check-in, but no, you go ahead, and before we do that, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of love letters, since you're here and it just dropped, and talking about love letters to things nostalgic and all that, do you want to go ahead and plug Suicide Jockeys? Because I was blown away by it, man. It was great.
Well, thanks, man. That's those are kind words, and I thank you for them. Yeah. So I didn't do a good job introducing myself. So I wrote in Hollywood for, you know, a good 15 years or so. I swerved into the comic book lane a few years back with a book called Aberrant, which is another love letter to 70s paranoid spy thrillers. This was nominated for 2 Ringo Awards, won another. And then I did, I don't know, the book that kind of made me, I guess, was a dark superhero noir called Banjax that was nominated for 4 Ringos. So good. We were nominated for Best Series alongside Bitterroot and Something's Killing the Children. So that was a good one.
Good company.
And then for this this year that we all spent in our bunkers, I released 2 books on Kickstarter. One was a sort of dark, twisted astral projection thriller called The Jump. Another one was a Fargo-esque crime drama called The Peacekeepers. And so now my latest and greatest, what old Goose is talking about, is a book called Suicide Jockeys, which dropped this Wednesday via SourcePoint Press. And that is our speaking of Roadhouse, that is our Roadhouse homage variant cover. Yeah, there you go. The risque variant of Jump in that bottom corner. So Suicide Jockeys is tokusatsu for the rabid American action movie fan. And so tokusatsu for the uninitiated is this kind of bonkers Japanese sci-fi genre that includes things like Power Rangers, Super Sentai, Voltron, stuff like that. But it also includes kaiju fare like Godzilla. And so our book, in a nutshell, is Fast and the Furious meets Voltron. Extra dollop of heart and soul, and some really kind of interesting intellectual conversation in terms of like the fabric of time and space and time travel and who we are and what the universe has in store for us and all that stuff. So yeah, it was it is a cool book. I co-conceived it with a friend of mine named Brad Warner. So one of the weird and sort of not often explored lines in my bio is that I happen to be an ordained Soto Zen Buddhist monk. And so because of this, I have these odd connections to Japan in general. Soto Zen is a Japanese sect, but specifically to the Japanese film business, because I'm in the film business. And so so one of the people I know through my Zen travels is a guy named Brad Warner, who's another Soto Zen monk. He happens to be a writer in his own right of note. He's written about a dozen books about Zen. He's like one of the American Zen authors right now. He wrote a book called Hardcore Zen, which is the subtitle is Punk Rock, Monster Movies, and the Truth About Reality. And so it's kind of over the course of, I don't know, a decade and a half become like the modern Zenese technical manual. So if you're at all interested in things Zen or meditation or anything like that, I highly recommend that. But Brad sold a couple 100,000 books just on his own. But Brad and I, we spend a lot of time together in Zen circles. We, a couple of times a year, go to the Mount Baldy Zen Center for these retreats where you're just kind of staring at a wall meditating for days on end. When we are allowed to talk during those retreats, you're often not, but we would get to talking about things we loved when we were growing up. And we were both huge Tokusatsu fans. Like when we were growing up, like the local UHF stations, for me, it was WKBD 50. Every Saturday morning at noon played weird, crazy fucking Tokusatsu shit from Japan, and I was fascinated by it. Brad had the same experience, but he fell so in love with it that basically the minute he could, he moved to Japan to try and get involved in this stuff, and that was where he found Zen and studied Zen. But he ended up going to work for a company called Zubraya Productions, which was founded by the guy who created Godzilla. And they have for decades done great Tokusatsu fare, but they're best known for doing all the Ultraman stuff. And so Brad worked for a dozen years as a producer, as an executive on Ultraman. And so here's how it breaks down. When I pitched this as Fast and the Furious meets Voltron, I have the Fast and the Furious thing handled. One of my claims to fame in the film business is I've actually written for the directors of 6 of the 9 Fast and the Furious movies. I have written big poppy action movies for 15 years. And so I have that side very much covered. Brad has been a producer on Ultraman for 12 years. He very much has the Voltron, the Tokusatsu end covered. And so while I am making sure this is a kick you in the teeth, howl at the moon action ride, Brad is making sure that Tokusatsu fans have an authentic experience.
So it's not a mistake that Denver kind of looks like Vin Diesel in the comic.
It's actually not. It's actually not. He does, I guess, look a little bit like Vin. It's probably just the fact that he's got a bald head and he's a badass. If you look closely, it is 220% Bruce Willis. And so the model for him is so the book takes place on 2 planes of time, right? There was what happened 10 years ago, this horrible mission gone wrong, and then there was the present where everybody's kind of fallen on hard times. The team is broken up; they have to come back together, and so we have young, handsome Denver, who has a full head of hair, and he looks like young, handsome Bruce Willis of like moonlighting times, and then 10 years later, you have older, grizzled, Bruce Willis with the shaved head and 10 years of hard drinking under his belt. So yeah. So those are there. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah. You know, when I first cracked it open and I looked at him, all I could think of was yippee ki motherfucker. Especially in the 10 years before, he's got the Die Hard one haircut, and then when it jumps into the now and he looks like Live Free Die Hard Bruce Willis. I oh man, I loved it. It's great. I think I said last night when I messaged you that I thought it was Bruce Willis.
Yeah, and I mean, you read all of my stuff, and I'm I love this stuff, and Die Hard is maybe the greatest action movie ever made. Every movie we watch now is Die Hard, on a boat, or Die Hard on the space station, or whatever. Die Hard at a bar mitzvah. So I mean, it can't help but like infect everything that certainly I do, but whatever. So you're always going to see that action movie DNA. I mean, the Die Hards of the world. Cobra is a big one for me for some reason. But Beverly Hills Cop, 48 Hours, Lethal Weapon, all those buddy cop movies really kind of influenced me and influenced my writing period. This one is weird because you'll see all of that in here, but all of these other references I'm throwing around aside, if you really want to talk about what this is a love letter to, the biggest influence on this series, there is a subgenre of action movie that we saw for like a minute and a half during the late 90s that was obsessed with like machismo and swaggery fucking swinging dick heroes, and who were like unapologetic about their confidence and their fuck the world mentality. And so I'm talking about films like Face Off, Con Air, The Rock, Armageddon. I don't care what anybody has to say. These movies are brilliant. They're fucking incredible. And so I have if you look at my office, I'm in my office, full of all my craziness. Like the best stories I ever told, I told my action figures when I was a kid. And so I write in this office full of them. And so there's a lot of crazy shit in here. But if you look down, there's an old VHS setup down there, CRT TV and a VCR. And then that bookshelf down there is just full of old VHS tapes. And so, I come in the morning, I get ready to write. I throw a VHS tape, whatever comes to mind, in the VCR and just play it. And sometimes I pay full attention to it. Sometimes it's just on in the background. It seeps in during osmosis. And so as I started to conceive this thing and write this thing, I found myself always putting those tapes in. It was The Rock, it was Armageddon, it was Con Air, it was these movies, and they sort of kicked their way into this thing, and I think in a very glorious way. And I'm really excited about it because I think that those movies are unheralded. They're not appreciated nearly as much, and so it was nice to kind of I don't know, just.
I hear you, man. I'm a hardcore Schumacher fan myself. I love all those old Joel Schumacher films, man. Just really classic stuff. One of the things I really love about your book is the play with Mandela Effect. That is one of my favorite kind of modern theories, and the whole world lines thing. And I really love that got introduced in this book because I almost didn't expect it. You're almost halfway through and you get like this really kind of cool, like you said, Fast and Furious Power Ranger thing. And then you meet the guy in the bar that starts talking to him about basically Mandela Effect, and the dude's like, are you sure this isn't a sex thing? And you still get the really good jokes, but I really didn't expect that, and it really made my jaw drop to be like, damn, can't wait for issue 2 of this. This is getting serious. This is getting pretty bold.
Well, yeah. So the first issue is I mean, necessarily you're setting up the whole conflict, right? And so it is necessarily kind of plot heavy and action heavy. You're introducing people to all that, but yeah, what is in there and what really kind of takes center stage as the book unfolds is that there is this really kind of important intellectual element to this. I mean, this is a book that was co-conceived by two Zen monks at a Zen center in the mountains during retreat, and so we are asking big, hairy existential questions in this book. I mean, the same stuff we would explore on a Zen retreat, we were exploring in this book in the pages. And so it's two Zen monks having a very serious conversation about the fabric of reality and the nature of life and all of that stuff. And so yeah, you're going to see a whole lot more of that. I warned you about this. Give me 2 seconds because my 4-year-old is screaming her head off. I'm going to check in with her. I will be back in a minute. I promise. I'm so sorry. Give me 1 second. All right.
No problem. All right. This is
Oh,
going
man.
pretty
No.
awesome, man. What an interesting
I'm-
fella, huh? Joe's muted.
Yeah, no,
I got
dude,
two
I'm
gooses
having a blast. The
tonight.
only thing I will say is he didn't mention the last Boy Scout, and we're gonna talk about
yeah,
Bruce
you're right.
Willis in the '90s, man.
Did you wanna-
Gotta throw that one out there.
Did you want to start a check-in while he's gone, or?
Yeah, might as well. Joey, you wanna all right, Mr. Grant, we do this thing. We'll get back to Suicide Jockeys in a minute. We do this thing we call a check-in where we kind of talk about what we've read this week.
Yeah.
And since you're back, why don't you kind of start us off? Like, have you read anything really cool or seen anything that you want to recommend to the folks out there?
Why don't you guys start and I'll hop in. I don't have anything in the chamber right now, so give me a second. I'll come up with something. So go around, hit me last.
Okay, Goose, you start us off.
Oh man, this week as far as reading, I read Suicide Jockeys, which I was really excited about. But another one that I got to read, and I'll be doing a review on it soon, is The Hunt for Solivor, from our buddy Lane Lloyd and Greg. I've got it on my tablet. I'll have to pull his name up. I read that and was really blown away by it. I love Lane's art. And it's 44 pages, and I think it's setting up something really, really great. Just this great fantasy book. Then other than that, right before we started, I was flipping through the TV, and American Ultra popped up, and God, what a great fucking movie, man! That's basically what my check-in was. I worked a lot this week, but those two were definitely some of the highlights. Well, three with all the stuff that I did, but yeah, definitely the highlights of the week.
Yeah, we'll have to do a Buzz Bites on American Ultra. I love that flick as well. Joey, hit us.
Yeah, it was a light week of reading for me. I got to read Second Chances. It's a noir kind of assassin book by Image. It was pretty solid, man. The art is beautiful. It leaves you on a cliffhanger that definitely makes you want to pick up the second issue. I also read Batman Chronicles, the Clown Hunters book. It was pretty solid as well. They go into a little more of Clown Hunter's background and history. And I finally cracked open my Spider-Gwen omnibus. And I read the first volume in the first chapter, and all it did is make me want to rewatch Spider-Verse. It definitely, you could feel the vibes that the movie definitely pulled some influences from the Spider-Gwen books. And Pat and I finished the second season of Servant, and let me tell you, man, I dig that show, man. It's on Apple TV. You guys should go watch it. It's pretty damn good.
Yeah, Jason Latour really outdoes himself with Spider-Gwen. I'm a huge fan of a lot of his stuff, but like after something like Loose Ends, yeah, Spider-Gwen's probably some of his best work. As for me, aside from Suicide Jockeys, of course, which, like I said, blew my mind, especially when it gets to the metaphysical stuff I love. I got one of my Kickstarters from a really neat fella named Aaron Reese. He wrote and drew this thing himself. It's called Black Blizzard. I actually got my copy like right after the book funded, so he didn't even really wait till Kickstarter cleared it to send people their books. And he also drew my favorite character from the book on the envelope, so it was super sweet. So I wanted to give him a shout out before I turn the floor back over to our buddy Rylend. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, you're talking about Kickstarters. There's a really great Kickstarter rolling right now. It's maybe one of my 3 or 4 favorite Kickstarter books, and I'm pretty deep into that world. But the OZ.
Oh yeah, I'll back in it right here. We're all proposed buddies, so yeah.
Yeah, by David Pepos, who's one of my closest friends in comics, and it's just a really brilliant, twisted fucking take on the world of the Wizard of Oz. You talk about a world of things. Pepos is kind of taking us on an acid trip there, and it's pretty awesome. So highly recommend that. I spent a lot of my week reading the Over the Top novelization by Joel Don Humphreys. Which I highly recommend if you have a minute. I am going to, after that, move on to another 48 Hours novelization. This one is by Deborah Cheel. So I'm looking forward to those. I like to read those while I'm on the toilet. Everything flow really nicely. My my podcasting partner David Avalone, who co-created Drawing Blood with Kevin Eastman and is a brilliant writer and a hilarious guy. He just launched a new Elvira thing. Elvira meets Vincent Price, and
Nice.
it's fucking hilarious. I mean, it's like, you know, he does a lot of these Dynamite books, and I had you talk about, okay, well, what would you want to write, and what would you submit to writing and all that stuff. And when I was just snooty movie guy coming into the comics business, I was like, what the hell could I do with Elvira, or what the hell could I do with, whatever, Evil Dead or any of these stuff. And he goes in and it's 100% Elvira, but he so makes it his. And it is so like different and twisted, and he has done something so impressive and so unique with these books he does that I'm I don't know, I get really excited about them. They're hilarious, and it's like a master class in this stuff. So it made me kind of like open up and think, oh wow, like you can kind of make something amazing out of almost anything. But also like Elvira is kind of badass. But he signed this one for me. He says, "Thanks for reading. Don't sell this on eBay." So, sorry guys. And then we don't have to talk too much about this because he certainly doesn't need any more fucking pub on this thing. But you talk about my closest friends in comics. Sean Lewis and I, we were at MIU together when we were 19. He was a fresh-faced kid. He was an actor at that point, going to school at the Stella Adler Conservatory. I was a young buck interning for Hal Hartley in New York City. And, I don't want to date us too much, but years later, we're both where we are. We're both comic creators. And, I've done a couple of pretty solid things, but his ass just wrote Kingspawn. Which had over 500,000 orders on it, which fucking blows my mind. I mean, I was at a comic shop, because my book came out on the same day. I'm at a comic shop and people are buying Suicide Jockeys, and that's nice. But you have these guys they're walking away with boxes of Kingspawn because they want, because if they order enough, they get the special variant or whatever.
Yeah,
and I'm texting with Sean, and I'm like, dude, there's a guy who just bought 200 copies of this because he wanted like this variant. This is a fucking phenomenon.
Oh my god!
And it's funny when that happens to anyone, and it's funny when it happens to anyone that you know. But your goon friend, who you've known since you were 19, and it's happening to him. It's great, and it couldn't happen to like a better guy and a more talented guy. So it is nice to see him. And now, he can do whatever the hell he feels like. So I'm interested to see where he goes with this. So congrats.
Yeah, we just covered his book Clan Killers on one of our episodes. So yeah, we're big fans of his too.
It's a good book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of our favorites.
Well,
I'm all in on The Few. If you like Sean Lewis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, The Few is a great fucking book. That's one of the better books Image has done in the last couple of years. So look that up. A lot of people missed it, but great book. Anyway, I interrupted you. Sorry, man.
No, I interrupt you. I was going to say, speaking of favorite books and love letters to what we've been talking about with Suicide Jockeys, Johnny actually sent me one of my favorites right after we'd become friends, and I thought I didn't know if you've read it or not, but Die Hard Year One from Boom Studios.
Oh, wow.
Have you read it?
I have not seen it. Is it good? I didn't even know it existed. That's crazy.
Howard Chalkian wrote it. It's really good. It's a lot of fun.
It's literally John McClane's first day on the force, and he thwarts a terrorist plot on a boat. And I have one issue with it. There's not a single yippee-ki-yay motherfucker in the entire book. But other than that, it's super awesome. I pulled it off the shelf when we were talking about Die Hard because I wanted to ask you if you had read it. But you had mentioned doing films and then now doing comics. Was it hard to transition from doing film and TV to a new medium being comics?
No, not really. I mean, there are things that are different about it. But I do a lot of how-to panels at cons. I mean, I was not too long ago like the goon sitting in a panel at a Comic-Con trying to learn how to do this shit, and I got a lot of good information and a lot of really shitty information. Once I had gathered all the right information, I thought it was kind of, I thought it was I owed it to the world, to the comics world, to like share that shit, and make it easier on people. And so that's something I've taken very seriously. And so, most every panel most every con I go to, I organize, I moderate a publishing your first comic panel or something like that. And I recently did that for the LA Film School, which is a pretty badass film school here in Los Angeles of all places. But what I did was I gathered up 4 of my friends who have successful careers in both film or TV and comics, and we went to the LA Film School students and we said, look, I mean, first of all, there's not a ton of opportunity, or not enough opportunity in the film business, right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, you have 8 million people jockeying for the same handful of jobs, and so like you kind of have to find other ways to. It's not enough to be a screenwriter these days. You have to be a writer, and that might mean fiction, that might mean comics, that might mean whatever. Just be a storyteller. That was the main thesis of the thing. But more than anything, it was like, okay, well, you're getting a first-class visual storytelling education at the Los Angeles Film School, and that actually makes you like a first-round draft pick in terms of coming into the comics world and knowing how to kind of convey things. I mean, I for whatever it's worth, I have a master's degree in directing from the American Film Institute Conservatory. That's where David Lynch went, and Aronofsky went, and a bunch of other snooty filmmakers. And so so that tuned me up. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm when you're writing a screenplay, you're just writing the story. When you're writing a comic book, you're writing the screenplay, but you're also kind of directing the film. Everything that I would give to a cinematographer or a production designer, I'm putting that all into a comic script. And then, and then if I can make my kind of meta 4 or meta 5, then my artist, my colorist become my cinematographer, my production designer. And I treat if you look at my books, I give myself a writer director credit on every book. And that pisses some people off in the comic world, but they can go fuck themselves. But I come from the world of film, and so I just treat each one of these things like a little film I'm directing, and it's the same process for me.
Well, I gotta say, you nail it. Like, I remember that when I first read Banjax, I was just like, "Oh my god, this is one of the most badass movies I've ever read." Like, that's literally what I thought. Like,
that's actually a great quote, and I may put that on a future trade paperback or something like that. That's great. But yeah, I mean, I try to make them feel filmic and cinematic. I mean, if you go back to Aberrant, Aberrant has a soundtrack. I put songs in every book, and the first issue has, I don't know what it is, 4 or 5 songs. And so the first thing you see in issue 1 of Aberrant is a music cue. It's "Don't Worry, Be Happy" by Bobby McFerrin. And so you start out and you're singing that song in your head. The lyrics come across, and so you're while the scene is unfolding, you're hearing the song. You can't help but hear that song play in your head. And so it makes it feel very cinematic, and then the thing kind of progresses like a great action movie you'd see. And it helped. I mean, it was I obviously work in the film business, and a lot of my job is setting up IP and adapting other people's IP and stuff like that. I've been involved in a lot of comic adaptations over the years, and now it's happening with mine. 2 weeks before issue 2 of Aberrant hit comic shops, it was optioned for TV by Tony Krantz. And Tony Krantz, the critics often compare Aberrant to 24. It's like 24 with superheroes. Tony Krantz is the guy that produced 24, and so there's no mystery why that happened. But he also did like Felicity, and he produced Mulholland Drive for David Lynch, and he's doing Woo Assassins at Netflix now, and so he's got that big action thing down. But when I sat down with Tony in these initial meetings, he's like, he basically said the same thing you did. It's like, hey, this just read like a movie. I could just see it. It felt like a TV series, and there were 10 issues of Aberrant, and that felt like a Netflix season to the people who were reading it. And
the way I see it, it kind of puts you ahead of the curve, because from what I see for the foreseeable future, comic books are going to dictate what films are going to be. Like, sure, the superhero craze will die off, but if you look at the streamers, they're turning stuff like Rick Remender books and smaller comic books into shows and movies. And I think that that's just going to keep continuing. And I think the way that you and some other up and comers kind of really do these cinematic books like that kind of put you ahead of the curve and made your stuff a lot more adaptable than, say, some guy that's trying to do I don't know, something a little more experimental.
Yeah, well, I mean, I make it easy on them, right? And that's just because I'm writing from a place of kind of knowing what goes into a film. And yeah, I mean, it's by design, in a lot of ways. I mean, so when I started writing in Hollywood, you wrote a screenplay and you took it out to the town, and if it was good, you sold it. That was how the business worked. And I did that for a couple of years. And but then things changed radically. There was this perfect storm of, like, the financial crisis hits right around the time the writer strike hits. Hollywood uses that as an excuse to completely remake the way they do business. Basically, overnight, they're making about a third as many films as they were making before. All the independent money dries up. The independent film movement kind of moves on to television and mutates. And so if you're making movies like I was doing, things got really different very quickly. And that coincides with this thing that we're seeing. We're still smack dab in the middle of, you hit it on the head, is the IP revolution, where we're in this place where everything on TV, everything, that gets made in Hollywood has to be based on something, a book, a comic book, a video game, whatever. And so IP is intellectual property. I just blew right past that. But so I had a couple of lean years, right? You couldn't sell an original idea to save your life. And I went to the American Film Institute. It's the greatest place in the world to study directing. There are brilliant screenwriters that come out of there. I went to AFI with some really fucking amazingly intelligent, talented people, and most of them are not in business anymore because they got wiped out by this, because they couldn't change. They didn't see the change that needed to happen. And I don't know, somehow, some way I got hit with a lightning bolt at some point. And I'm like, you know what, if they want IP, why don't I give them IP? And so I took this idea that I would have previously written as a spec script, and I knew I couldn't sell it. So I wrote it as a short story first, and I got the short story published. And like overnight, we had a bidding war over it. We had Justin Lin on one side coming off of Fast 6, which was at the time the largest opening in Universal summer history. We had Brett Ratner and Robert De Niro on the other side. Competitive situation, people, bidding war type thing. And like Tyler Perry came in off the top rope and tried to make an offer, and it was a weird situation. But this was like a big high profile sale, right? And indicative of what was to come. But my agents are like, oh, well, that was a fluke. That'll never happen again. And I'm like, no, this is where the business is heading. Like, let me prove it to you. Short and sweet, I've done it about 8 times since then. Like almost everything I've been paid to write since has been based on some sort of IP, whether it was fiction or whatever. And with Aberrant, I started to do it with comic books. So it's what I tell, these students when I'm talking to them is like, a lot of them are like, okay, well, what is your one piece of advice for like a would-be screenwriter? And it's like, well, you can't just be a screenwriter. It's not enough. There are not enough screenwriting jobs for you to just be a screenwriter. If you like going back to whatever, Pennsylvania, where you grew up and selling insurance with your dad, then just be a screenwriter. Not that there's anything wrong with that. If that's what you want, cool. But if you want to be, it's not enough to be a screenwriter. You have to be a writer. You have to be a storyteller, and you just need to. If you have a story to tell, you have a story in your heart, and you got to find some way to get that out. It is so hard to get anything going in Hollywood, and they want proof. And so if you have success in the fiction world, if you have success in the comic world, with the comic book, it's amazing because they can look at it and see it. Again, they can read it like you did and be like, oh yeah, this is a movie. It makes it very easy for them to say yes, as opposed to looking at like a 120-page block of fucking type. So I had to become just a a storyteller, a creator, and I found almost any way I can do to kind of get ideas out there, and you can't just. There are way too many asshole screenwriters who take their failed scripts and try to turn them into graphic novels, and it goes horribly. It has to be appropriate for the medium.
Yeah.
You know, if you read like Banjax and Aberrant are 100%, those are comic book stories, right? You know what I'm saying? Like if I tried to write those as a script, like people would laugh at me. Once they see them as a comic book, they may then turn them into a movie. But so you need to tell stories that are appropriate for the medium and in a way that is that does justice to the medium. You have to use the tools of the medium in an artful way. But man, just tell fucking stories, you know?
Yeah.
And keep doing it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and it's very apparent with other writers and stuff too that you're like, it's like the new hybrid style. You got guys like your pal, like you said, Rodney Barnes. You've got Christopher Cantwell. You've got guys like Darcy Van Polgeis, Andrew Carey. Even Jeff Lemire went to film school before he decided to get into comics. So, you know, it's films definitely you see it in comics. It's influence media, you know, all kinds of entertainment. It's all, we're in like an almost a new golden age of like comic inspired entertainment. It's insane. Like and man, like your books just definitely like hit the right tone and represents it so well.
Yeah, well, thanks. Those again are kind words, and yeah, you know, it's just like I write what I like to see and what I like to read. You know, I mean, it's the problem is, you know, I mean, it's why I got into comics in the first place, is that you can, you know, the stories you can tell in Hollywood, you can kind of fit them on a postage stamp, right? They make 5 different kind of movies. They're all the fucking same. They want them written a similar way, and that was not what I grew up with. You know, there used to be movies for everybody and movies about everybody, and you know, I mean, for me, I saw Pulp Fiction when I was way too young, and I looked at it, and I'm like, I want to do that. That blew my fucking mind. I'd never seen anything like it, and I'm like, I want to do that, and I want to give this feeling to people. But by the time I got out here to Hollywood, like they had stopped making those movies, you know, and so I get spit out into the workplace, and you know, I don't want to be the asshole who's complaining about getting to write movies for a living, but you know, I get kind of stuck writing these action movies. And don't get me wrong, again, like my favorite films are fucking Die Hard and 48 Hours and stuff like that. So I love doing it, but I also have this like more twisted intellectual side that was not getting nourished. And so after about like 12 years of writing in Hollywood, like I got kind of depressed, you know. It was like I felt like stilted.
In a rut.
You know, the worst thing. Yeah, well, the worst thing was like my writing got shitty, you know, and that is unforgivable, and that's panic time for me. And comics kind of saved my creative life. I mean, the beauty of comics is you can tell any kind of story with any protagonist, sort of any kind of way, as long as it's good. You will find a publisher, you will find an audience, people will celebrate it. And that's very much what I found. And so when I went into comics, I made this pact with myself that I was never going to tell a straightforward story. I was going to double down on experimental elements and playing with structure and unreliable narrators and all of this craziness. I mean, issue 2 of Banjax is told from the point of view of a man who hasn't slept in 7 days, and it is literally driving him mad. And so he is starting to hallucinate, and the world is starting to bend, and you have no idea what's real and what isn't. And in the end, you're given no answers, right? Like, you don't really know. I mean, Banjax in general is a study in this because, I mean, for those who didn't read it, Banjax is kind of a Batman and Robin story. Batman snaps and, you know, goes you know, Death Wish basically, and Robin has to bring him back in, but he's not remotely up to it. I don't want to get too much into the nuts and bolts of that, but it's just, it is this two-hander. And so how I've told the story is the odd issues are told from the Batman's point of view. The Eve issues are told from the Robin's point of view. You have two men telling the same story, but they are given their own like very slanted, prejudiced takes on everything that happened. In the end, again, you're not given any like definitive answers. And so you are left as a reader to kind of figure out what happened. And that is an interesting ride. And everyone who reads it has a different take on exactly what happened and what's real and all of this stuff. And I think that's awesome. And so it fucking invigorated me. It brought me back to life, and it made me love writing and creating again. And the irony is like, it is now found, all that shit has found its way into my film work now. the last job that I had in Hollywood, I got hired to write this heist joint, and I've written 5-6 of these things over the course of my career, and they're all the fucking same, right? And every room you walk into in Hollywood, they have 2 of these in development, and none of them get made because they're all the fucking same. And so so I could have written that movie. I've done it before. I can do it in my sleep, like fucking writing that movie, bought this house that I'm in. But like it, but I would have got a paycheck and it never would have got made. And why waste everyone's time? And so Crisis of Conscience again. I'm like, well, all that shit that I'm doing in comics that makes me feel alive. Like, what if I just did that here? What if I took all of that shit, the playing with structure and the unreliable narrators and the experimental elements, and just tossed everything at the fucking wall on this thing? And I did it. I went off. I didn't tell them I was going to do it. I spilled all that shit into this thing, and I just turned it in. And it took them like way too long to process it. I started to get worried. We finally get together for a notes meeting, and there are like 3, 4, 5 extra people on the call, and I'm worried, and I don't know what this means. And they're like, we read it. And there's a long pause, and I'm sure I'm getting fired. And then they're like, and we fucking love it. All this crazy shit you're doing, go back, do more of it. We want more of this and more of that. And so to just like cut to it, like I took this thing that would have just been this fit of nonsense that died on a shelf, and now like it is a TV show at Lionsgate with fucking Daveed Diggs from Hamilton and Snowpiercer attached to it, with Emmy Raver from the Umbrella Academy attached to it, with Rafael Casal from Blind Spotting attached to it. We have 3 heavyweight actors, and this thing's like going, and so comics, they saved my creative life. They gave a jolt to my career, and again, like these worlds are so like hopelessly intertwined right now that there's just not, there's no way to avoid like having a foot in both ponds, Well,
that's good. So I also really enjoy your prolificness. Like, you've been really busy lately, and it's been very much appreciated because like you've had like 3 or 4 books just this year, and like they've all been fire. So like that, and you're working on film scripts too. Like, man, that's pretty killer, bro.
We got a goddamn movie shot over the pandemic too, in Italy and Guatemala with fucking Emil Hirsch.
Oh wow!
It's kind of a sci-fi and jeans style, like mindfuck, a la like Gattaca or Ex Machina. And so, COVID permitting, you'll see that, I don't know, by the end of the year, maybe early next year or something like that. But next movie shooting in Greece in the spring. So yeah, a lot of stuff, man. I mean, it's kind of the beauty of being locked up is like you have time and space, right? So a lot of just trying to get all these stories out of my head before I die, I guess. I
also think it's neat that with your meeting, you kind of showed these guys that they want it too. They're tired of being in that rut as well, and that's kind of nice that you were able to like kick their minds open a little bit with your script. That's actually a really neat story in itself too.
Yeah, I mean, it was you're buzzing the tower and you just hope you don't hit it, because a lot of times you hit it.
Right.
But yeah, I got away with it that time, and fortune favors the bold, right?
It's awesome to hear that comics gave you a newfound confidence and motivation and inspiration to like just go for it and just be like, fuck it, man, I'm gonna write the script I want to write and just go for it and take the chance. That's just great to hear.
Yeah, it continues to also, and I'm not in a, I'm not like in the minority there. I mean, it's like, why do you think, again, Rodney Barnes is the showrunner on the Lakers series for HBO. Like, why is he spending his time writing, he's writing the next Evil Dead thing for Dynamite.
Yeah.
Of course, Philadelphia makes sense. It's his, it's whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, why is he writing Blackula? Why is he? Because this shit is fun and this thing is like this shit is soul food, and it does it for all of us. And same thing with Cantwell. Is like Cantwell is like a world class TV writer, And but his, he has like, one of the more prolific, comic portfolios right now, also because it keeps him sane. Because like all of us, he is wrestling with some really heavy shit, and and when nothing else works, like writing fucking Iron Man, like keeps him sane and alive, and I'm right there with him, so yeah, sign me up.
Well, Source Point is actually one of my favorite new up and coming labels, and I was kind of wondering how you ended up getting hooked up with them, because it's a great fit, and it's just really good to see you there. And I was wondering how that ended up working out.
Yeah, they're great people over there. I met the Source Point guys. I was at the Ringo Awards in 2019. That was the year we won for Aberrant, and I'm at a table with folks from my then publisher, and we're having a pretty good time. But there was this table next to us full of these maniacs. They were having the best fucking party I'd ever seen in my life, and I was like, I want to be at that table. So I made my way over, when everything was done, and just introduced myself, and got to know Josh over there, and Travis, and Jacob eventually, and they're just great guys, and they have a really kind of singular vision for the company, and the strides they've made. I mean, it's a weird comparison to make because of like the Harvey Weinstein baggage more recently, but it's like the stuff that Miramax was doing in the 90s, like that's where it feels like Source Point is now, where they're kind of finding new, very challenging, often young voices, and putting them in front of people. And I think they're a tastemaker label. And it was not a matter of if, but when I did something with them.
Yeah,
and so go ahead.
Because I think you're originally from Michigan, right?
I'm from Detroit, actually. Yeah,
Detroit. That's what I was reading your books, and you dropped Detroit and some other hints in some of your writing. I was like, then when I saw you signed on with Point Press, which is a Michigan-based place, I was like, he has to be from around Detroit or Michigan somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't hurt that they were Michigan boys, but really didn't play too much into it, but certainly gives you something to talk about. Bad boys basketball, and fucking Charles Woodson, but sure, that didn't hurt. But yeah, it's good, and it's not one book with them. And it's not to say that I won't do stuff with other people, but it feels like a home base. I mean, when I sat down with them, it was like, okay, well, I want a place that I can bring everything, if I'm inclined, and so that that was our arrangement, and we struck a deal accordingly, and I'm having fun. I'm excited to see what's next with them. So.
Would you be interested in writing for maybe another title that they have? Because I would actually like to see you take on Broken Gargoyles. I'd like to see your kind of take in that universe, or maybe do a book in that universe, because it would just be fun to see you play around in that post World War I insanity.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love it. I mean, but that's Bob Sally does a fucking first class job with that, and I guess I'd be afraid that I was gonna fuck it up. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, would I, with Bob's blessing, do some sort of spin-off, World of book where that was kind of a love letter to the work that's already been done? Yeah, I would, if everybody was cool with that. But it's it's weird. I mean, it's like, Bob's like, he's an amazing writer, but it's like, is the idea of Bob coming and writing Banjax or something like that is odd. Would he do a great job? Probably. But sure. If the weather was right, sure, we could talk about something like that. But I mean, they do some great stuff. And what I like about Source Point Press too is that they have their toes dipped in other waters. They have this tabletop gaming stuff that is really interesting, Deepwater Games, and making a shit ton of money on Kickstarter with these things, and they've begun the process of actually turning some of their comic titles into tabletop games. So the idea of the Suicide Jockeys tabletop game sounded pretty awesome. So I don't know, maybe in the not so distant future you'll see something like that. But yeah, it's interesting. It's like, whenever you're talking to these publishers, it's like I don't need somebody who's gonna do the Hollywood thing for me. You know what I'm saying? Like I can do it most better than anybody. So I want somebody who's gonna bring another element to the mix, and they have really interesting merchandising prospects and stuff like that. So we're talking about all that stuff.
Yeah, and I saw that I went on their website as when I was trying to find the digital version of Suicide Jockeys, and I saw that cover A was completely sold out. I'm telling you, man, you keep knocking it out of the park, and I'm super happy for the success that you're getting, and especially like being able, like more people reading your books. Everything I saw on Twitter on Wednesday was just like awesome reviews of Suicide Jockeys, like back to back to back, and man, it just makes my heart happy. I love it.
Wait, other books came out this Wednesday? I thought Suicide Jockeys came out because it was the book of the week.
Yep.
Well, again, I mean, it was King Spawn week, so that's maybe any other week. But the guy in front of me in line buying 250 copies of King Spawn maybe disagrees with that. But you are right in that. I was actually, I think it's a great book, and I thought people were really going to dig it. I was surprised at how positive everything was. Every review was positive. Most of them were glowing, and that was amazing. It's a great place to be in, but it's also a weird place to be in because I'm waiting for like the one asshole who's going to pop up on Comic Book Roundup and give it a 4 or something like that. There's always the guy. And it usually comes 2-3 weeks later. And I try not to care about this shit, but okay, so you go to Comic Book Roundup, like for Banjax, and it's like, I don't remember what it is, issue 1 or whatever, and it's like 10, 10, 9, 9, 8.7, and then there's like, the one idiot who came in and gave it a 4, and it's just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why take the time to write this? You know what I'm saying? And it's usually somebody who like, who like, he summarizes the plot, and it's almost like he was watching a fucking episode of Barbie or something like that. He has no, there's one guy who reviewed issue 3 of Banjax, and he had only read issue 3. He hadn't like, and his negative review was like, well, I don't really understand what's going on here. And it's like, well, motherfucker, how about you read 1 and 2 first? Sure. And so I don't want to pop off on reviewers because, like, reviewers do God's work and all that stuff. I think some people are in it because they're like they're mean trolls and they need to lash out at people. But so we have had great praise, and there've been some fucking, I mean, people have kind of like adopted the personality of the book in their reviews too. So the reviews are hilarious, and the reviews are like fun to read about it because they got excited and you can feel it, and that's amazing. That feels great. But I'm waiting for the asshole, and it's going to come. It'll probably come. I don't know. Look forward in 2 weeks or so. The 4 out of 10 review of Suicide Jockeys #1, where they, they call it derivative, and when it's it's supposed to be an homage.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to worry because, man, everyone on Twitter has been loving it, and it's I mean, I don't think you have to worry. You got a hit on your hands, and you're with a great company, Source Point Press, so I think that's a match made in heaven, and I think sky's the limit now.
Plus, mecha and kaiju comics are huge right now. There's a lot of really good ones popping around, so it's a good atmosphere for the type of book, and it's really nice that, like a lot of the other ones that we enjoy, we've talked about a few on the show. Yours is completely different than anything that's come before it in this genre. So, like, that's what's neat about it, is it's invigorating as well as being, I wouldn't say derivative, but definitely it takes a few winks and nods from a couple classic things. Like you can see some Voltron in there and stuff. But aside from that, like, yeah, as after you get to meet your character and then you start getting into the plot of the book, you're just like, wow, dude, I've never read a mecha story like this before that's going to have some Mandela Effect time travel adventure in it, man. That's pretty innovative.
Yeah. Well, again, it's not just the fun, right? It's there's I like to say you get like a side salad with your pizza, right? It's there's a very real philosophical and intellectual like debate raging through this thing, and really at the heart of it, it becomes this kind of Boogie Nights examination of a non-traditional family, and about the families we kind of create as opposed to the ones that we're born into and stuff like that. There's an interesting social conversation going on too. You'll see that unfold. Nothing that's preachy or that purports to have answers or anything like that. But and it's a book that's very now. I mean, it's like we just lived through like just a fucked up, hellish, twisted like year and a half, right? And this book takes place in that fucked up, twisted year and a half to the T. The one twist being that there are also kaiju monsters. And when you really look at what we've been through as a society over the last 18 months, like that's not a big leap to take, right? I mean, if a monster came out of the water and attacked London, like would any of us be surprised? It might be the fifth craziest thing that's happened in the last year and a half, right? So.
That's one of the things I love because you see the January 7th panel, and then the next one is the big attack, and you're just like, like that could actually happen after what we saw earlier this year, and and that panel is hilarious the way it's depicted, the January 7th attack. I thought that like you guys handled that pretty spot on. Like you definitely pointed out the importance of it, but you made it the joke that it should be seen as, in my opinion. And thank you for that.
Yeah. What's up, lady? I got a 4-year-old kicking her way in. How you doing? What's up? Yeah, I'm still doing the podcast. How you doing? Did your movie end? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you want to watch something else? All right. Give me a minute. I'll wrap up and I'll be out there. Okay. There might be more mac and cheese. We can talk about it, right? Yeah. It's probably dessert time for you, right? You see this? This is the life of a creative. So I've had a hell of a time, but I think I think our clock has been hit here.
That's all right, man. We've had a great time.
Yeah, so I should tag out. I feel like I could talk to you guys for another 2 hours, but I don't know that my 4-year-old will. She's climbing me like a tree right now, but yeah, but cool, yeah. So I will sign off now. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem, and thanks so much for the wonderful conversation. And you have a beautiful night with your little girl. And yeah, man, we appreciate you. Period. And just keep on being amazing, brother. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah. Thanks. Yeah, thanks. And let's do it again when I'm free of the. When I'm free of this this climbing, but it is for the interested. It is at Rylend Grant on all forms of social media. You can see it typed right there, and the Backer Kit store, the Jump 2, the Jump all one word, the number 2, the jump2.backerkit.com. You'll find the Jump and Peacekeepers there. You will find this is still happening. You will find autographed copies of Aberrant and Banjacks. You'll find rare con variants, all sorts of fun stuff. It's kind of a one-stop Rylend Grant shop. And it is kind of the only way now to get signed copies of anything from me, because obviously pandemic shit, but also have a 4-year-old, obviously. I have a day job that takes a lot of time. I don't get to travel too much. So if you're in Southern California, you'll see me at San Diego, at WonderCon, at LA Comic Con, at the Long Beach cons. I don't do too many others. Like if they nominate me for an award, I have to go to Baltimore for the Ringos. But other than that, I'm stuck here down in the lower left corner. So so if you want an autographed book, yeah, the jump2.backerkit.com.
Dad.
Cool. What's up, lady?
Uh-oh.
All right, man. Take it easy.
All right, take it easy, guys.
Thanks again, man. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
All right, that was Mr. Rylend Grant, and what an interesting interview. And yeah, what a wonderful end to it too. That was adorable.
Right towards the end, my Wi-Fi started getting wonky, and I was like, "No!" The one time I don't need it to go wonky, it just starts like just blowing up on me. But
Oh,
I come
it'll
back.
do it. It'll do that. That's what happened to me with Steven Uri. Like our first interview, I was like so nervous anyways, and then yeah, my Wi-Fi just decides to completely, and like I left, Joe was stuck in charge, so just like at that, I shit my pants face for the rest of the interview. And yeah, man, I can't believe we held that one together. But yeah, wow, what a
That
cool
was
dude, man. Rylend fucking rocks, man. I knew it
that was
anyways, but
Mm.
good.
I'm happy his book is sold out and it's doing well and everyone loves it because you know, it's nice to see people have success in comics and then apply it to other places. Well, he came from movies first, obviously, but it's nice to see he transitioned successfully to comics and now is transitioning back from comics to movies and television. It's awesome.
yeah, man. That and like he was name dropping some of the guys that he's worked with, and he was talking about John Woo, and like I was trying to keep things comic related and on topic, but the whole time I just wanted to be like, oh, dude, we fucking love John Woo
Oh,
over here.
I wanted to talk to him about Japanese movies so bad after he started bringing that up. I
Yeah,
wanted to get into some Sion Sono and like Mike talk if he was into it, but I guess next time because but wow. Thanks for setting that up, Goose. That was definitely one of the crowning achievements of the Pink Buzz so far, I think. And I think we're going to call it a night with that. This, of course, was Pink Buzz, an interview with Rylend Grant. We will be doing one episode next week since Joey is going to be on vacation, a well-earned one. There would be no Pink Buzz if there wasn't Joe. He is the heart and soul of this show. So we're going to do a Bites. We're going to be featuring Miss Horror Geek Mel. We're going to be talking about the autopsy of Jane Doe next Friday night. It's going to be a lot of fun. And Joe might actually even make it back from vacation, but I'm not going to force
maybe.
him. If he doesn't show up, then it'll be fine. But that is the plan for next week if anybody cares. But Horror Geek Mel's going to be here and it's going to rock. So if you miss
Should be a
it,
great episode, man.
And I'm gonna
Mel's
keep
an
my pants on.
Mel is awesome, so everyone should tune in for that one because Mel's an awesome chick.
yeah, she's one of our best friends, and yeah, she's always just so supportive. So, and she's going to be relaunching her podcast and her whole
Soon.
Horror Geek Life stuff soon. So, really happy to help her get her name back out there. So, yeah, join us because it's going to be a fun movie featuring Emil Hirsch, who our buddy Rylend brought up a little earlier. So that's a nice little coinky dink. But until next time, this is Pink Buzz, brought to you by Graphic Vandalism, and that means don't stop reading, don't stop watching awesome movies, and support that rad ass music, y'all. Later.
Have a great week of reading.